Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Now we are starting a new chapter. This is chapter 36a, and this is under a new title. This title is called The White House. Why is it called The White House? Because Jacob is now going to Lavan, White House. Beit Lavan, the White House. Anyway, yeah, you think that's a coincidence? Oh no, it's not. Neither is the title of this video, and this is called Den of Thieves. How fitting. Halu et Adonai kol goim, shabechuhu kol haumim, ki gavar alenu chasdo, ve'emet Adonai leolam, hallelujah. I just want to let you know, I'm really so grateful to be able to do this. Really, every time I do this, it really energizes me. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for sending your emails and asking questions. These are very, very trying times, and you have to ask in order to move forward and not be afraid to move forward. Anyway, let's get into it. So, Den of Thieves in the White House. Ooh. When you walk, your step will not be straightened, and if you run, you will not stumble. בלכתך לא יצר צעדיך, ואם תרוץ לא תיכשל. This is from Proverbs 4:12. Jacob's steps were not straightened. Straightened not as in yashar, it will be made straight, but rather straightened as in from the straits. Min hametzar karatia, from the straits I call to God, right? So, בלכתך לא יצר, from metzar, also from Mitzrayim. They're all the straits. In other words, your step will not be straightened, okay? And if you run, you will not stumble. This is what is being told to Jacob. So Jacob's steps were not straightened. Now we understand? Cool. So Jacob received a spiritual power, which resulted in a physical power up, if you will. Not only was he a complete tzaddik, not only was he a Torah scholar, but he just received a promise from the creator of the universe for safety, security, longevity, and continuity, not to mention eternity, of course. And if any of us got some really good news at any point in our lives, right? Not, for whatever reason, we can kind of relate, although it may have been a tiny fraction in comparison. Oh, hey, I got this gig that I was working really hard to get, some good news, some this, some that, whatever. You feel like you're walking on air, right? So guess what? You just got a guarantee from the creator of the universe for not only this life, but the world to come. Would you not be flying? So Jacob was, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. We become lighter. There's a skip in our step. We become friendlier, kinder, more generous, of course. I got a big paycheck coming in, making it rain. See what I'm saying? This is how we are, right? And all the things we should be, regardless of things that are going our way or not. In other words, we have to be all these things, regardless of whether we receive good news or bad news. Jacob was these things, regardless. Nevertheless, he just received some good news. So for Jacob, this was that because he was who he was, and because of how he carried himself. In other words, that's why he received this promise from God. And his strength did not fail him. Like a mighty man of strength, he rolled the rock right off the well, and the well would rise and overflow. We are continuing, obviously, from last week's chapter and teaching. Jacob ran from morning to noon, 17 days' journey. It might have even been a few hours. And when he arrived at the well, he didn't need to catch his breath, it said. He was there. He took a few steps and boom, he was from Temple Mount all the way up north of, Haran is like north of Syria. It's in Turkey. When he saw Rachel coming out, he loved her. He saw her, right? He got that feeling because he saw the one who he was destined to be with. Also, again, they're in a public place, right? That's where all the shepherds were meeting by the well. But he wanted some privacy and asked the shepherds to, fellas, clear the room, would you? When they replied and said that they had to, because read actually what it says. We're going to read. It's amazing. Jacob cleared the vicinity for them. They replied and said that they had to wait for the other shepherds to get there because they couldn't move the stone. There were only 3 men. And Jacob did what he did. He goes, oh, is this a problem for you? Get your drinks and get out of here. Right? Genesis 29 reads, and he said, the day is yet long, meaning it's not even midday. It is not the time to take in the livestock, water the sheep, and go pasture. Go. Right? And they said, we cannot do that until all the flocks are gathered together, and they will roll the flock off the mouth of the well, and we shall then water the sheep. We have to wait for everybody. Jacob wasn't having any of that. While he was still talking with him, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess, right? You don't often see shepherdesses, right? It's generally shepherds, although who else was a shepherdess? Jethro's daughters, right? Moses came to the well. Right? You see, okay. We see similarities over here. And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother. Why do we need all those toppings on top? And Moses was shepherding his father-in-law sheep. Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, Kohen Midian, the high priest of Midian. Why do we need all these titles? Reasons, okay? When Jacob saw Rachel, who was Rachel? She was the daughter of Laban. But his mother's brother. In other words, Rivka came from the same house, and look, she was awesome, right? And the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, again to remind us, his mother's brother, that Jacob drew near and rolled the rock off the mouth of the well, and he watered the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother. 3 times in that one verse it says his mother's brother, to show you that there is an opening, that Jacob actually can go and dwell there safely. So if you'll notice, nowhere does it say that Jacob put the stone back on the well, as he didn't need to. Why did they put the stone back in the well? See, the water kept on overflowing after he popped the cap off. We said the sages say that he lifted this rock just like a man takes a cork off of a bottle to drink. So he watered the sheep. How did he water sheep? They didn't have to pick up buckets because that's how it was before. The water was overflowing. It rose to him the same way the water rose to Rivka when Eliezer was standing there and saw, oh, okay, yes, you need to come with me, girl. So they brought the sheep near, and the sheep were just drinking directly out of the overflowing water from the well. Now, he didn't put the cap back on. Why? Because there was no fear of the water stopping. The moment Jacob came there was an abundance. Before Jacob arrived there was a shortage of water. Jacob brought the water, right? The well that we were talking about of the last 2 or 3 chapters, it preceded Jacob to that place. He went right, and next thing you know, boom, behold, and there's a well standing before him. The same well that was with him on Temple Mount. You understand? So there's no reason to cover this up. No more competition. There's abundance for everybody. Back then, only if everybody's here, then can we drink, and everybody's under supervision. Now, bring it. Jacob is here. So it'd be like that. The same thing with abundance, not only in water, but in everything else for the 21 years that Jacob spends in Laban's house. Between 20 and 21 years. So by the way, Beit Lavan, where Jacob went, the house of the most wicked, sadistic, manipulative, and powerful sorcerer in the world. The grandfather of Bilam. Yes, the great Bilam, who taught him everything. Meaning Lavan taught Bilam everything, including to the inclination to destroy Israel. Jacob, Israel. Beit Lavan in Hebrew, like we said, is the White House. Let that sink in. This is not by coincidence, my friends. And the shepherds saw this, and they were awestruck, as they could not remove the stone from the well, and Jacob did so himself with ease. A beautiful Midrash interpretation from Bereshit Rabbah about Genesis 29:2 says as follows. So the verses, and he looked, and behold, a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks, right? This is the beginning of the chapter, what we discussed. Behold, there's a well, boom, right in front of him. 3 flocks lying beside it, because from that well they would water the flocks, and a huge rock was upon the mouth of the well. Jacob, Israel, soon to be Israel, yes, came and saw 3 flocks of sheep led by 3 shepherds. These are Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Okay? This well would later be commanded by Miriam, who would water all of Israel. Rabbi Akiva says, anyone who enters a city and finds maidens coming forth before him, in other words, as he's entering the vicinity of the city, before he actually enters the city, but when he sees the maidens coming outward before him, his way will be prosperous. This is what Rabbi Akiva says. Now, Rabbi Akiva is not speaking in general terms, okay? Because if you go to Vegas, there are many maidens coming forth before you. You know what I'm saying? I promise you, prosperity is not what lies ahead. What Rabbi Akiva is speaking of is in the context specifically of finding a wife. And you need to be a holy man in order to do so. Now, I'm the one here connecting the dots for you, but so you know in the future, if you do study Talmud or Midrash, and a sage says something seemingly out of place, we have to tie it within context to the topic of discussion. Okay? It's very important. Everything goes within context. What are we? Them? We don't take things out of context. From where do we know this to be true? Come see from Eliezer, the servant of Abraham. He was in the same spot, right? And before he even entered the city, there were maidens coming before him. As said in Genesis 24:13, behold, I am standing by the water fountain, and the daughters of the people of the city are coming out to draw water. Hine anochi nitzav al ein hamayim, right? Ubnot anshe ha'ir yotzot lishov mayim. Rachel, it says she was a shepherdess. Rivka was not a shepherdess. She was just coming to get some water, right? And the Holy One, blessed be He, granted him success, meaning Eliezer, as said in Genesis 25:56. But he said to them, do not delay me, since the Lord has made my way prosper. Send me away, and I will go to my master. Hitzliach darki. Hatzlacha. Hatzlacha rabba. Hatzlacha is success. Darki, my way. God literally made my way prosper. Why? Here's one example. Let's bring another one. Otherwise, this is just, what is this, right? So it translates as prosper, but the word hitzliach, like I said, comes from hatzlacha, which means success or to try or to succeed. Who else can we learn this from? What example did I just give before? Moshe Rabbeinu. As before he even entered the city, there were maidens coming before him, as said in Exodus 2:16. Now the chief of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water, and they filled their troughs of water, to water their father's flocks. God granted him success, and he ascended to kingship. Right? Moses was basically the first king of Israel. For those of you who don't know, yes, Moses indeed was a king. Later on, David did what Moses did. He learned and taught Torah, and he judged the people and brought them closer to God. That is what David did because he was following Moses' example. That is what Moses did. A king is different than a high priest. Very, very different. The job of the king is to bring people to God. The job of the high priest is to make sure of the letaherotam, to make them pure. In order to do so. In other words, they have to work together. These are 2 very, very distinct, different positions, never the same position. Okay? There's a reason that everyone has their position and not everything is clumped up into one supposed dude. See what I'm saying? Yes, you do. Great, let's continue. This is the job of the king. This is the job of Mashiach. And unlike other religions, we do not worship men. Did anyone worship Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob? Who are, by the way, kings in their own right in the land of Canaan. Did anyone worship Moses or David? Of course not. The people must obey them, but they lead the people, and only because of their humility. That's why God raises them up. Our commentators bring another example here that they say is missing from the actual text of Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Like we said, this text is 2,000 years old, and so not everything is in the same variation. I have several of them, and that's why sometimes I have to double check to see what's what. And so what's the third example? This is of King Saul in 1 Samuel 9, 10 to 11. 10 to 11? Yeah, 10 to 11. And Saul said to his servants, well said. Actually, it gives you 11, but I'm giving you 10 for context. Let us go. And they went to the city where the man of God was. Now, as they were going up the ascent to the city, meaning they didn't even enter it, they found young maidens coming out to draw water. And they said to them, is the seer here? You see this? And we know that Saul was prosperous and did succeed in the beginning of his way. Okay, so notice, by the way, how all these encounters are by a well, right? Where else can we learn this from? Come and see from Jacob. As before he even entered the city, there were maidens coming before him. It said in Genesis 29:6. And he said to them, are you going, how's it going with him, with Lavan? And they said that things are going well. And behold, his daughter Rachel is coming with his sheep. Im Hatzon, with the sheep. Now we know that he first ran into the other shepherds, but this applies specifically when the maidens come out of the city towards you. Okay, we got this. We see examples, Jacob, Eliezer, Moses, King Saul. We're good. We see? Yes? Okay, we got those dots. Great. Rav Huna says, everything is known before the Holy One, blessed be He. I hope we know that, yes? Before Jacob came to Haran, what did the Holy One, blessed be He, do? He sent a plague among the sheep of Lavan, and few were left out of many. In other words, most of his sheep were dead, and Rachel was tending these, as is said in Genesis 29:9, while he was still talking to them, meaning the other shepherds. Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. So again, understand this, the text tells us that Rachel was a shepherdess herself, right? However, God made it so. Why? So her sheep were the only ones not affected by the plague in order to create this encounter. You see? You still believe in coincidences? In other words, she had a little bit of sheep over there, but all the other sheep were gone. So just her sheep, meaning the sheep that she was in charge of under the White House, if you will, would go out there specifically because that's where Jacob needed to see her. And so it was. Like we said, the Holy One, blessed be He, knows all things. No coincidence. Okay. You understand that every single person who crosses your path, God placed them there for a reason. Every last one. I'm not even joking. You could be driving by in your car and people that you see God put them there. So again, don't get all high and mighty that it's all about you, because the same thing for them. Every single person that every single person passes in the street, has an encounter with, God sends them. Only God can do this, obviously. But everybody needs to cross everybody's path, okay? What you do with that encounter, that remains to be seen, right? I'll give you an example, okay, of bad behavior, my own, versus good behavior, my wife's, right? We're driving, someone cuts me off, does something ridiculous, and I get angry. What does Anarina do? God brought them in front of our path. We will now pray for this person. Yep, okay, you see. Anyway. So the higher your knowledge of God and His methods, that's the reason for each encounter to become more and more increasingly clear, right? A person who's so well connected with it, I understand now why God brought you here, right? It's not only for, let's say, me to teach a lesson to you. Sometimes it's for you to teach a lesson to me, and so on and so forth. Or to get us to converse about something. You see, there's always a reason for everything. We are just so wrapped up in everything else that it's too much for us to understand or comprehend. Our heads would probably just explode. And how do we know that most of the sheep were lost? We're going back. Check this out. The simple text gives us the answer if we only know what we're looking for. Genesis 30, verses 36. And he set 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, and Jacob shepherded Lavan's remaining sheep. You see this? Now this is in the future, right? We can and should point out the obvious, and that is, but these are Jacob's sheep, right? This is in the future. Many years later, he fathered 11 out of the 12 tribes, and he had done very well for himself. Great observation, okay? But context, we need it. And the answer is simple and beautiful. If it had not been for Jacob, Lavan would have had no sheep at all. And so the remaining sheep are the original flock that Rachel was shepherding, that in Jacob's merit grew from that point, making him and his father-in-law very, very wealthy. We also know in the Midrash that when he left there, Jacob tithed 600,000 sheep, meaning Jacob had 6 million sheep. It would cover mountains, 6 million, many mountains, and that's only sheep. We know he had a lot of everything, so he tithed 6 million sheep, which is 600,000. What is the significance of 600,000? It is the number of the children of Israel who left Egypt. Shishim ribo, it is called. And Moses is equal to Shishim ribo. In other words, there's a very strong connection between Jacob, Israel, and Moses. Jacob is the outer part of Tiferet. Moses is the inner part of Tiferet, or the upper part of Tiferet, if you will. Moses has his own distinctions as well, but in this case, this is what that is, okay? Or as Jacob told Lavan in Genesis 30:30, for the little that you had before me has increased in multitude, and the Lord blessed you upon my arrival. But now then, will I to provide something for my household? Right? Now, let's just read that in Hebrew. כי מעט אשר היה לך לפני, ויפרוץ לרוב, ויברך השם אותך לרגלי, because of my foot. God blessed you because of my foot. Now, the term to focus here, it's a bad translation, right? It says, and the Lord blessed you upon my arrival, which the Hebrew reads, ויברך השם אותך לרגלי, literally translated as, and God has blessed you because of my foot, or leg, right? Regel, foot or leg, is an important word in the Torah. For instance, we have 3 festivals at which all of Israel have to ascend to Jerusalem. Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And these are called Shlosha Regalim. Regel, Regalim, Raglaim. Why is it called 3 feet? You understand? So why is the Regel or Raglaim so significant? Our feet and legs carry us wherever we choose to go, be it to do good or evil. They are the lowest part of our body, and yet they can lift or drop us. Furthermore, and this is not something that we discussed here before, but there does seem to be a disjunct, especially when it comes to categorizing the days we are in and the days to come, okay? Check this out. This is very cool. The days before the coming of Mashiach are called Ikvot Meshicha, or Ikveda Dimshicha. It depends which translate, whether it's in the Zohar, whether it's in the Mishnah, chapter 9, Masechet Sotah, whether it's in Masechet Sanhedrin 97, 98. It all talks about Ikvot Mashiach. Ikvot Mashiach literally means the heels of Messiah, right? Why the heels and not the feet when they say the footsteps up? No, completely different meaning. Because we all make up one body and one soul. That is of the first man, Adam. We've discussed this plenty of times. God created one soul. That soul shattered and so on and so forth. Okay? And all the sparks of holiness have returned to their place over the course of almost 6,000 years. Now, since we are in the last days, no one is going to dispute that, by the way. Nobody. In fact, again, even 50 years ago, the 6-day war, oh, Mashiach is coming, still, and when people said this, there were still well-respected rabbis that said, no, we're not in that time yet. We're definitely getting close to it, but we're not in it. Today, no one is going to tell you that we are not in those days. No one. And this has never happened since the history of our people. So, exciting times, right? All right. So, the lowest part of our body is the heels of our feet. It's not the feet, it's the heels of the feet. It's the lowest part of the lowest part, right? This was the time limit that God gave the serpent back in Genesis 3:15. Ve'eva ashit bencha uben ha'isha uben zara'acha uben zara'a Hu yeshufecha rosh ve'ata teshufenu akev. And I shall place enmity between you and between the woman, and between your seed and between her seed. He will crush your head, and you will bite his heel. Akev. You understand? Not his foot, not his leg, not his face, his heel. And with that same heel, we crush the head. You see? That's the time limit that God gave. It's a secret code in Genesis. We discussed all about this in Satan and the Serpent, from Dust You Are, one of the earlier teachings in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer regarding man. We went in the order of creation over there. Listen to that. There's a secret code in there. That's why we all have to die. That's how you get rid of death, by dying. Okay. Anyway, snakes don't bite the bottoms of people's feet. How many, even if you step on a snake's head by accident and they get out of there, they're going to bite your leg, right? Snakes do not bite the bottom of people's feet, but rather it's the bottom of Adam's foot, like we said, meaning the heel. Once all the sparks have been gathered, that will crush the head of the serpent. The heel is being manifested as people return to God. And once that heel is fully formed and manifested, crush your head. You're done. We understand? Very cool. Let's continue. So that's why, again, in the heels of Mashiach, okay? The heels of Mashiach, once the body is fully formed, which it is, in the end of days, we just need that heel, and that's what we're working on currently. Okay, now we could continue. Any questions? Email me. It was the feet of Jacob that brought fruitfulness and growth of Lavan's flock. From here, our sages say that there is a foot of a man that blesses a house, and a foot of a man that destroys a house. Another example of this godly favor is Jacob's son Joseph. Genesis 39. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and whatever he, Joseph, did, the Lord made prosper in his hand, just like his father Jacob. And Joseph found favor in his eyes, and he, Joseph, served him, and he, Potiphar, appointed him over his house, and all that he had gave into his hand. You see? And who else can we see this? We also see this from Moses. Everyone loved Moses. Egyptians, Israel, Pharaoh, everybody loved Moses wherever he went because he had that aura about him. Everything he did was just good, right? Because he himself was good. So not only was the house of Potiphar blessed by Joseph, but everything that Joseph touched was blessed. Pharaoh understood this, which is why he placed him in the highest station in the land. He says, oh, God's got his eye on you. He recognizes God. And what happened as a result? That Pharaoh wisely placed this man who was favored by God above his house. Egypt became the most powerful and wealthiest empire in the world. And what happens when we let snakes into our midst? What happens when the serpent entered the garden? Everything comes crashing down. This is yet another reason why we are so careful as to who we bring into the tribe as far as converts go. You see, we let plenty of snakes in and they're doing plenty of damage. They will be expelled, obviously, but not before the damage that they're causing. And boy, they're going to pay for it. There are those whose intentions are anything but pure, and in turn, we all have to suffer. This is something that's undeniable. As Lavan told Jacob in Genesis 30:27, and Lavan said to him, if only I have now found favor in your eyes, I have divined, and the Lord has blessed me for your sake. This is where God said, stay away from Jacob, because Lavan tried to do a divination. He wanted to kill Jacob. God's like, try it, see what happens. Okay? Vayomer elav Lavan, imna matzati chen b'einecha, nichashti. That's what I divined. I try to get rid of you through my words, my incantations. The Lord has blessed me for your sake. In other words, I'm still here because of you. In other words, I try to kill you, and not only were my efforts rendered useless, but despite the fact God granted me success. Lavan had no sons until Jacob arrived. right? And then from his sons, Bilam came. And who were Bilam's sons? Yanis and Yambres, who brought about the golden calf, the heir of Rav. You see. The water coming from the well was barely enough to sustain the surrounding area, but when Jacob arrived, it overflowed until he left. That's why all of a sudden, where's this prosperity going? Lavan's wealth grew leaps and bounds since the tzaddik entered his sphere. Are you seeing this? Lavan admitted what he did, and none of it mattered. He admitted. How could Jacob, you'd think that he'd be sleeping with one eye open, but he admitted what he did, and there was nothing that he could do to Jacob. As we read in Psalms 121, my help is from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not allow your foot to falter. Your guardian will not slumber. Al iten lamot raglecha. Al yanum shomrecha. Hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Israel. Behold, the guardian of angel will neither slumber nor sleep. It's all about the foot, baby. Do not underestimate the power of your feet, my friends. They carry us and take us where we need to go. But guess what? We also leave our footprint from where we have been, and this is to serve as a reminder to us as to where we come from. When I read Psalms 26, I can't help but think of Jacob. Listen to these words of David. Judge me, O Lord, for I have walked with sincerity, and I trusted in the Lord, I shall not falter. Who of us would dare say, judge me, O Lord? As in, go ahead, look at my insides and hit me with the truth. A few times in my life I've said that. Every time with tremendous fear and trembling, because you don't want that. You do want that because if God judges you, you're going to get smacked. But as a result, when I say smacked, God is going to remove all the impurities from your life, which could be the very conveniences that we live by. But the moment you ask, I want to be closer to you, God, please help me be closer, that's when he's going to do these things. That's part of his personal judgment for you. So it's better to do that, but be prepared. You're going to go into hardship, but this hardship leads to a greater level than you could possibly imagine. Okay? All right. Each one has got their own thing. Test me, O Lord. Oh boy. And try me. Ay. Refine my reins and heart. This is, again, which one of us has the guts to ask this of God? For your kindness is before my eyes. Because, see, he sees how God works. So whatever rebuke, whatever punishment that I might get is a good thing. For your kindness is before my eyes. This is a kindness, though we might see it as a judgment. And I walked in your truth. Jacob was given the seal of truth. Chesed LaAvraham, Emet LeYaakov, or Emet LeYaakov, Chesed LaAvraham. Jacob received God's seal of truth, and I walked in your truth. I did not sit with dishonest men, neither did I go with hypocrites. Although he was with Lavan, he never took on their cultures, their traditions. He kept all the Torah, as he told Lavan, his brother afterwards. I hated. We are commanded to love our enemies and really saneti kahal mirei. I hated the congregations of evildoers, and I did not sit with the wicked. Who did Jacob hate? Who did David hate? People who hate God. It's very simple. Not whatever beef a person's got with you, don't hate them, even if they are your enemy. But if they hate God, if they come out openly against God and against his people, these are them. So God does use the word hate. You understand? Because it goes everything opposite to him. I hated the congregation of evildoers, and I did not sit with the wicked. I washed my hands with cleanliness, and I encompassed your altar, O Lord. The water, the altar, that's where you pour the water around the altar. To proclaim thanksgiving with a loud voice and to recite all your wonders. We read in Genesis how Jacob would give thanks to God in his house, right? Where he was. O Lord, I love the dwelling of your house and the place of the residence of your glory. Question, did David ever see the temple? No, he did not. The temple came after David's time. Solomon, his son Solomon, built the temple. What about Jacob? Did Jacob build the temple? No. When he was there was a forest with trees and a few rocks over there that were once an altar. And yet, how can David say, he says in the past tense, "Oh Lord, I love the dwelling of your house. Ahavti, I loved. Oh, with all the times we hung out, unbelievable stuff." What's he talking about? The understanding, this is Beit El, this is the house of God, and behold, this is the gates of heaven over here. "O Lord, I love the dwelling in your house in the place of residence of your glory. Gather not my soul with sinners, nor my life with men of blood. In whose hand," because David himself was a man of blood, but still, these are milchemet mitzvah. "I killed those who came against you, God." Even though both our hands are filled with blood, I'm not one of them, right? "Gather not my soul with the sinners, nor my life with the men of blood, in whose hands are plots and plotting, scheming, whose right hand is full of corruption, Lavan, Esav. But I walk with sincerity, va'ani betumi elech, padeni v'chaneni, redeem me and be gracious to me." Innocently is how the Torah describes Jacob's walk with God. Ish Tam, Yoshev Ohalim. This is Jacob. God told Abraham, "Haloch lefanai bitmimut." If you walk before me in innocence, I will give you everything. Here we go. My foot stood on a straight path. Ragli amda b'mishol, despite what everybody else tried to do. I will bless the Lord in the assemblies. B'mekalim avarech et Hashem. Do we need a reason to publicly bless God? How do we bless God in public? It's not standing on the street corner and screaming to people to come to Jesus. I can promise you that. That's not how you bless God. Be a godly person. Wherever you go, in whatever it is that you do, you don't need to work in Torah-related things. Go to your day job, but be different. Be Jacob in the house of Lavan, where everybody else is one way and peer pressure starts to kick in. Remember Jacob. Remember what he did. Im Lavan garti. Well, we're going to go on this in the future teachings. But anyway, he didn't lose anything when he was in the house of Lavan. He didn't lose from himself. Sometimes we might, okay, fine. And we give up a little bit on our morals and on our ethics. Slowly but surely, it starts to bother us until it doesn't anymore. And then before you know it, you're already integrated. And this is how you kill Jews. Love them. Love the Jews. The Jews will become part of you. That's what it is. Hate the Jews, and we will be one. Because the nations remind us of who we are. No, you are not one of us. Thank you. That's why anti-Semitism, though it is a terrible thing, it is a very good thing. It is a gift. It is a chesed from God. It seems like it's a judgment, and yet God reminds us through them who we are. You are not them. You are different than them. Recognize God in all things, with all people, and have no shame in this. Will you be ridiculed? Possibly, probably even. But that should matter less, as God sees all. You don't need to impress anybody. You just need to walk in truth. Jacob, truth, emit. You can live your life and you can live it well. Just remember that the quality of life is up to you. Be sincere and God will not let your foot falter. And that's our class. We will pick up the story of the White House next week. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week and Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.